What's up, guys? So a lot's been going on in the world of Nintendo. A lot of opinions out there. We have now a new model being announced, the Nintendo Switch Oled version. Everyone's got a lot of thoughts. Let's talk about mine. So let me see what's going on with my history with the Nintendo Switch. So I really wasn't into the Nintendo Wii. I was excited about the Wii U, picked up the Wii U, was kind of disappointed with the lack of Nintendo support of that console. So Switch launch day, I was there. I picked up a launch edition of the Nintendo Switch. I've had that since until very recently. I actually just sold my Nintendo Switch before the announcement of the OLED Switch. There was tons of rumors out there for a Nintendo Switch Pro coming out, which was going to be as powerful as a PlayStation 4 Pro, upscale to 4K. A lot of stuff going on. I figured, you know what, it's been 4 to 5 years. I think it's about time that I kind of get rid of my Nintendo Switch because if you saw my video that I made last year, my primary way of gaming actually changed unexpectedly is with this guy right here. So this is the Nintendo Switch Lite. This is obviously the special edition, gray Pokemon edition. I don't even know what these Pokemon are in the back. I haven't played Pokemon since the very first generation, but I really like the colorway on this, so that's why I own this particular Switch Lite. So since I picked up my Nintendo Switch, I primarily only played docked mode. I enjoyed playing the Nintendo Switch with a Pro controller on my television. But it wasn't until I went to a Best Buy one time and I tried this at the Best Buy that it changed my mind. It basically sold me on the Nintendo Switch Lite because honestly, you have to feel it to really believe it. Battery life is good, price is really good. It's $100 cheaper than the older Switch. It's going to be $150 cheaper than the new OLED Switch, and it's very portable. It's very quiet, silent, it doesn't get very hot while you're playing it. Screen is still the same 720p screen that you have on the original OG Switch. So the resolution is pretty much the same because the size is pretty much the same. So literally there's nothing really lost except for the fact that you can't play docked mode, which is disappointing. I wish you could play docked mode on this, but other than that, the experience of handheld mode on this particular Switch is just leaps and bounds better than the OG Switch that I happen to just honestly primarily go into handheld mode. Now, I had two Switches for a long time since I purchased this last year, and given the fact that I work full time as a doctor, I don't have much free time to game, to be honest. So I couldn't really justify having two Nintendo Switches. Plus, I heard about the rumors coming, like there was going to be like a better Pro version of the Nintendo Switch coming out. So I decided to sell my Nintendo Switch, the original launch model. I sold it for $230, which is $70 less than what I paid for it 4 to 5 years ago when it came out. So for me, I was like, you know what, I pretty much for 4 to 5 years enjoyed my Nintendo Switch, and I pretty much made almost all the money back. So for me, it was no problem. And then shortly thereafter, they made this announcement for the Nintendo Switch OLED model. So what are my thoughts on this model? Everyone's pretty disappointed and everything. I think we have to just temper our expectations a little bit. At the end of the day, you have to be honest with yourself. What do you play the Nintendo Switch for? If you're playing it for third-party games and it's one of your primary consoles essentially, then yeah, I understand. It's about time that we should have gotten an upgrade where you could have played in 4K. It would have been fantastic. But for most people, Nintendo Switch and Nintendo consoles have pretty much become a secondary console. I think it kind of transitioned when it was like GameCube to PlayStation 3. Around that time was when there was a transitioning happening with Wii, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch really has to be a secondary console for you. If you're a console gamer, primarily you're going to be gaming on the PlayStation or the Xbox, and really you're going to have a Nintendo for literally the Nintendo exclusives. And when it comes to Nintendo exclusives, these are really nicely optimized for their consoles. And Nintendo's always been really good with that. From Game Boy, DS, everything. If you play a Nintendo exclusive on a Nintendo console, doesn't matter what iteration of the console it may be, the experience that I have playing Breath of the Wild here versus the OG Switch is virtually identical. And that's something very important to keep in mind. Because Nintendo optimizes their games for whatever console iteration that you might be playing on, the experience on the Nintendo Switch Lite versus the OG Nintendo Switch versus the new OLED Nintendo Switch, I'm not really anticipating some major groundbreaking differences. Nintendo is all about optimization. The games are going to be fully optimized and they're going to look fantastic on no matter which system you play. Will there really be that much of a difference? Probably not, but it comes down to your personal opinion. Now, for me, I am interested to see what the games that I already own look like on an OLED screen. I am interested to see, with the new contrast ratio, what the game is going to look like. I'm looking forward to having smaller bezels and a little bit of a larger screen. And then I also enjoy the fact that now there's going to be versatility so that I can come back to the television. But That's also because I sold my original Nintendo Switch. So for me, primarily my Switch right now is the Switch Lite. And I do genuinely do miss being able to play Nintendo Switch on the couch. That was my primary way of playing Nintendo Switch before I picked up the Lite version. Now, the other really interesting thing is going to be, for me, what sold me on the Nintendo Switch Lite and what sold me on handheld gaming with the Nintendo Switch altogether was the unibody design. It was the design of the Nintendo Switch Lite that really sold it to me. Otherwise, the resolution is the same, everything is the same as the original one. It's the design. Not having Joy-Cons actually makes Nintendo Switch Lite really a fantastic console, which I recommend even if you still don't have it and you're still on the fence and thinking about it. This is going to be $150 cheaper than the OLED Switch. I still think in 2021, this is a fantastic console. It comes in a lot of great colors. There's a lot of customization to it. It's very portable. It's quiet. Doesn't run very hot. It is truly a fantastic console. So where does that leave with my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch OLED version? Now there's three questions that I think you should ask yourself and to answer so that you can better understand if this console is right for you. Number one is the price. It's $350, definitely not cheap. So can you afford it? Number one. Number two, the handheld gaming experience. How often do you play your console in handheld? And then it's going to be interesting. Is it, did you prefer to play handheld